Rustam, welcome. Welcome to Duke's Corner.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Great to be here.
Yeah, it was nice to see you too. We're here to have a conversation because I see you're a speaker at JavaOne, which is coming up in October 17th through 20th in Las Vegas. And so I want to hear about your sessions, talk a little bit about the community, talk a little bit about JavaOne, and just, whatever comes up. Sound cool?
Sounds great. First of all, I'm super excited to see JavaOne coming back. I'm really excited to see how it's going to turn out and how it's going to be. And another thing is that I ended up with three, not just one, not two, but actually three different sessions. Wow. That's quite fun. So, but the topics also are very related. So it's actually kind of cool because it's all about developing cloud native applications in Java, but they are looking at it from a very different perspective. So there is a quite technical session with a colleague of mine, Mats, where we talk about how to create a serverless offering. So in the beginning, we start with a tiny little piece of code that technically cannot even run, right? Think of it as a method in Java, right? And then you're like, oh, how do we run this thing? Okay, fine. We'll just slap on a main method on it, and then you can just run it. Oh, okay, cool. But, how do you make it available for people not on your computer? Oh, well, probably we should put it on a web server or something, or some kind of application server. And then you kind of gradually go from, kind of not really functional piece of code that is just there and doing nothing and can't be even run, to a fully serverless option where you, where it can scale up and down depending on number of users and all this kind of thing. And by design, that piece of code is super simple. So it's just like very, very, very minimalistic thing, because we want to show the pipeline. We want to talk about one or several options of getting there as a serverless offering, but we don't want to complicate things with code. So that's one session. So that's a kind of technical deep dive into this. And then we have a session
So just a quick question. So when you say you don't want to complicate things with code, you're starting out with a small bit of code, but you're adding to it, right?
Kind of, but we mostly add in a way of I don't know, should I say infrastructure in a way? Because, you put your code on, so you have a code, right? How do you make your code available as a web service? Well, you add something. For example, in our case, we use something called microprofiles, so which you just annotate things and everything, and it will automatically generate a REST service out of it with an endpoint and all that kind of entails. And then we talk a little bit more about, so, you added a little bit of code, but you actually added more things around your code.
I see.
So now we are using microprofile to run it, and then we put that thing on different application servers. We put it on Open Liberty first, and then it's like, oh, well, it runs, cool. But how can we make it to compile on Graal VM and all this kind of things? Oh, maybe we should try putting it on Quarkus, and then we put that on Quarkus, and then we put that Quarkus container. It's like, okay, fine, now it's running, now it's available, and how do we make it even more scaling up and down and not just being there and just consuming CPU cycles? And then we put it onto serverless offering. So it's kind of, you add more in a way infrastructure and showing the I don't know if you can say pipeline for your code, how it can go from just static thing on your machine to being available to the whole world without costing you a fortune.
I see. So it sounds like they have a lot of options there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're using some of the options. So it's the kind of opinionated talk because we pick some of the, tools and everything and show you the way. But there are several options we mention it here and there and as alternatives and things like that. But it's of course you can put this tiny little, since it's so small piece of code, you can put it also as a cloud function, right? As a function kind of offering, Lambda, whatever it's called. It's different platforms call it different ways. But that would be too easy. That would be like, oh well, just slap it on there and it's going to be fine. But then we want to show a bit more complex solution, but still keeping code to the minimum, so people don't have to parse the actual code. They can put their own things, but know about the different options that you can go with.
Excellent. Cool. Okay. And that's related to the second talk?
That's kind of related to the second talk. The second talk is with Anna-Marie from Red Hat, where we talk, also fellow Java champion. So we talk about it's called misunderstanding cloud native. So it's more about things we do that we're kind of not supposed to do, or people tend to misunderstand when it comes to cloud native. I don't know, like say, well, a little bit of spoiler alert. I mean, we're kind of into spoilers already, but so I don't know. Let's say going cloud native means you have to put it on Kubernetes. Well, it doesn't have to be there, right? And things like that. So it's we talk about all these things that people do misunderstand with cloud native, at least in our experience. It was this talk kind of started when we two were talking about this and saying, oh hey, so actually a funny connection to the third talk. So I was doing my third talk, I mean the talk that I'll be talking about now in a second, and after I was done with that talk, we started chatting with Anna-Marie, and then we ended up like, hey, maybe we should do a talk about things people doing wrong with cloud native. And that brings us to the third presentation that I'm going to have. It's going to be a lightning talk with just me talking about 5 things you should do when developing cloud native applications. So, so I was doing this talk at a conference. I was doing a longer version of that one where I kind of pull in the different tools and talk about like, hey, what you can do in the world of Java to do this kind of things, tracing and metrics and fault tolerance, all these kind of things that usually come in handy when you develop things for cloud, when you develop things for cloud native, and also when cloud native really means it can run on cloud. It doesn't have to. You can perfectly fine run it on your own machine or on your own servers without actually going to the cloud. It's still going to be cloud native, right? So I was doing that talk, and then we started talking with Anna-Marie, and then we were like, hey, maybe you should do the opposite as well. And then that was the birth of the other talk that I was talking about.
Interesting. Sounds like you got it covered from beginning to end. So I'm interested in one of the things in software that I'm interested in is how things change, right? So software development today is not what it was 10 years ago and 10 years before that, right? So now everything is cloud, and I shouldn't say everything, but I mean, that's certainly is a
lot. Yeah.
Right. Is it for you when you're writing applications, when you're writing code, just sitting down in front of a terminal writing something, is it a different thinking process that you go through when you're writing something for, say, cloud native versus, say, 10 years ago when you weren't necessarily doing that?
I think so. Actually, that's
because you're using different tools now. You're using different, there's a different goal in mind sometimes, completely different tools. Has it changed your thinking as a developer?
I would say so, because I mean it's there is a lot of focus on microservices. I'm not saying that we have to develop everything in microservices, but you kind of more think in a bit more isolated bits and pieces.
I see.
While before you would do like heavy monolith clients with client server thing that would end up running on your own on-prem servers, with a heavy Java backend, with a heavy kind of Java front end. We were, the first quite a few years of my professional career, we were doing a lot of things that were heavy on Swing. So we were doing a lot of like Swing applications in a front that would require quite heavy front end, lots of validation, lots of things. And then you would go also at least as heavy back end because there is a lot of stuff happening there as well. There were like other projects where we worked even on something called Oracle Forms, if you remember that. There was some time ago when even all Java and everything would even run in a database in the background, and that would be like quite heavy backend as well with a lot of resource and everything. Now you do things a bit different. Now you develop it's mostly things going through web services very often. Very often it's going to be some kind of REST-ish kind of service. Now you try to think a bit more isolated. So you try to make it a bit more interchangeable in a way, so easier to upgrade. You think also more about the strategies you deploy things. Also, not only develop, but also deploy things. I don't know, like say canary releases, blue-green deployment, all these things that have been a very nice thing to do back in the days. Now it's more of a, not just nice thing, but it's more of a standard in a way. Now you cooperate much more with ops, so you have a lot of those things that DevOps culture bring to the table. So things have changed, and it's kind of funny that you mention it because I have another talk that I often do. It's called Escaping Developer Nightmares, where I'm not going to do it at JavaOne, but it's like I start with things that we have been doing in like 90s, early 2000s, which were totally normal back then, absolutely normal, and nobody would blink an eye on, and like if you would say things. But if I tell that from stage now, and people would be like, "Oh my God, this is scary," right? And then I kind of transition to like, now things have changed, and now we need to do something a little bit different again, and so there is constant improvement, and that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, it's and things are faster too. I mean, just everything seems to be moving faster. I think time itself is moving faster these days.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like I've missed 2 years. I still described last year, so we're already into like the second half of 2022, and I'm still describing last year as 2019.
Same here. I mean, you're definitely not alone.
Crazy. But I just noticed when I talk to developers and when I see them work, they seem to be incredibly productive. Even though there's more things to do, there's more tools. There's, as you said, microservices. Things seem to be more atomized now. They also seem to be able to be incredibly productive, as opposed to, say, 10 years, 15 years ago. Even Java, the development of Java is happening at a faster pace in the sense of the release, cycle. I don't know if development itself, but in terms of releases releases out more quickly, which can generate more involvement from the community, and
That's
things
great.
can move faster. So these are the things that interest me a lot, and particularly about how developers can solve really hard problems. So that's why I asked that question about how are things changing.
I think Agile also did something to us. I mean, this like Agile has been like used and misused in many ways, and like misinterpreted in many ways. But what I like there is that it's kind of what you say. You do things often. You do it more in smaller chunks, and you get the ability to correct your course and get better at what you're doing every time you do something. So at some point that get automated. Some parts gets automated that take a lot of your energy, brain capacity, call it whatever you want. And then you get better at that, and then you can actually focus on something else. And then you get better at that, and then you can focus on something. So it's a kind of continuous learning process, and that's, I think, that has also something to do with us kind of doing things faster, better, or I don't know. I mean, at least we love to think that we do, right?
That it's better, yeah. So you've seen at least a couple of sort of iterations and changes, sort of the natural evolution as time goes on in the field. Is this, being a developer, is this something you always wanted to do, like when you were younger, in terms of solving problems, figuring things out, using interesting tools to build things? Is that the way you were when you were young, or did you just learn it along the way?
Yes, I was. I mean, I started with programming when I was a kid, and I was in my early teens, I guess.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I started with BASIC. So we had some machines at school that would
Even
run
I learned
BASIC, and then
yeah.
I know, but I mean, it's like those machines were old. That was back then when I was doing it. They were old because they were just very, very soon after, like a year or two after, they were replaced with Pentium 2 machines, which was the thing back at that time, right? So it was a big jump from like older machines to this, but still, I mean, they were good enough to program. So I would just run there, borrow a book from the teacher, and just start typing these little pieces of code, and then run them and see how it works, and then change a little bit, and So I was doing that, but then I actually, some years later, I ended up with degree in computer science and all that, and so it got professionalized from just like hacking things together and playing around in front of a just computer. But yeah, I think it was something that I really liked from early age.
I was always interested, because I used to be in the construction business. I was always interested in building things. And I remember at Northeastern, I took a class in C programming on Solaris. Actually, it was
nice.
Yeah. So this goes way back, and I remember at the time asking the guy sitting next to me in the lab. So I heard this thing called Linux. What's Linux? And that's how far back that goes. And so, yeah, I've always been interested in this process of thinking through problems to build something. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. It could be a farm, right? It could be code. To me, it's all the same in terms of how you think to solve a problem using a tool to extend your ability, right? So, very interesting
actually,
to me.
Funny side note, when you said that, I was doing this kind of thing with BASIC and everything, and then I had a teacher coming to me and was like, "Hey, you know what? There is this really new language coming up, and it's just released, and you should have a look at it. Maybe you'll probably enjoy it a lot, but you should try it." And I was like, "What is this thing?" And well, you can probably guess what language that was. That was actually quite fun. That was kind of the birth of Java. That was somebody coming to me and saying, "Look, you have to have a look at that. This is a cool thing."
Yeah, that's cool. I remember my first JavaOne was 2000 when I joined Sun. I joined Sun just a few months before JavaOne. And I joined Sun from 3Com, which was a substantially smaller company at the time. And to me, Silicon Valley and San Francisco and Sun, those were massive, massive places. And I had no idea what to expect. JavaOne, what's that? I go to this huge conference. The keynote line, the line to get into the keynotes was wrapped around Moscone. It took 20 minutes just to get off of the street. Okay, so you kind of sneaking your way around Moscone, and I said, "What is this thing?" And I was just incredible, and that's to me. So that's 22 years ago, right? When I first really got into the community aspect of it, of software and open source, and so tell me a little bit about your experiences with the community, maybe JavaOne, previous JavaOnes, or just working in the community, because the Java community is, it's one of the biggest, I guess. Linux, Java, these are, the largest communities.
I love that. I mean, it's like coming to JavaOne, at least like before. I don't know. I'm really excited to see how it's going to be now, but it's like back in the days, it was like a big thing. It was like people from all over the world, all the kind of like-minded kind of, people. And I'm really looking forward to getting this feeling back again. And that was really fun. And also I've been involved in local Java communities, and I've been a lot. And I was also speaking at a very, very, very different and many Java events, conferences, meetups, Java user groups all over the world, really. And at least all around Europe and quite a few places in US. And, so it's been, I even been through a few places in Africa for speaking about there. So it's really cool to connect with people in the community, and the community is very nice. It's very welcoming, very, very kind of great. It's a great community. So it's real fun, and like I said, I've been involved in parts of that community. Now I'm more involved in contributing with content to the Java community around the world, and with presentations and talks, and helping and mentorship and all that. And also I work quite a lot with like I said, cloud native stuff, so cloud stuff, and where I help to design and build architectures with the modern kind of architectures. So I'm involved in the communities around that as well. So it's real fun to meet people all around the world. It gives you, I think it gives you a very different perspective than being in your own little bubble, right. At whatever, your country, your work, your local, thing. It depends on how big that bubble is, but still doing this all around the world and talking to people and meeting a lot of great people is really great. I mean, it's like, there's a lot of people on the literally other side of the world I would never ever have met without this community. I mean, what are the chances? I don't know. What are the chances of us two meeting? Right. Me being in Norway, you being in Japan. I mean, it's like, it's really, it would have been harder without the community, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a good show. Looking forward to it. Haven't seen Vegas in a while.
Be fun.
And yeah, and it's really, I looked at the calendar this morning when I got up, and it's only a couple of months, really.
Yep.
So, all right, cool. Well, Rustam, it was good seeing you here, and we will see you in a couple of months in Las Vegas, October 17th through 20th for JavaOne. We'll talk to you then.
Thank you for having me. Yes, and talk to you there.
Great. See you later.